physicists say, well, the only solution for all this extra gravitational bending is that we have invisible matter, because matter is the only thing that can bend the space around it and cause the effect known as gravity. So since there's nothing that can be measured and observed of this missing matter, we just simply make up a hypothetical substance. Dark matter is an imaginary substance to maintain and preserve the paradigm that every physical effect in the universe must have an equally physical cause connected to the effect and located in the same universe. Now, when I talk about my predictions, one of the predictions of my supergeometric theory is that there's no such thing as dark matter. And the reason why I predict that is based on my model. This bending of space is actually occurring. The cause of it is outside of space-time. It's not local. It's something that is pushing down into physical space-time from above it and causing these bends in space. And this is why we can't find visible mass to account for what we might call a lumpy universe, because those lumps are not dependent on mass to produce them. And what's a very interesting aspect of this, Jim, is that what it says is that it's not the mass that bends the surrounding space. It's that mass materializes within inside the bends of space. And that opens all kinds of doors. It actually is a model of how the universe came into being, Jim. Because, I laugh sometimes. I sit down and I laugh. I laughed when that article came out, when they've been looking for this dark matter, and this last device that they made was huge. Millions of dollars, built inside of an abandoned gold mine underground, 20 times more sensitive than its predecessor, and found no evidence of dark matter. And from a scientific perspective, for somebody like myself to say there's no such thing as dark matter, I'm basically standing in confrontation and contradiction to the entire scientific community for the most part. But what makes me laugh is when you take a look at the beginning of the universe. Here we have this Big Bang. And I believe in the Big Bang. All the evidence that we continue to collect continues to reinforce and reaffirm that such an event actually took place. That we had this quantum singularity, infinitely dense and infinitely small. And by definition, it was not physical. There was nothing physical. There was no thing. And then suddenly, what emerged out of this singularity was something. It was the physical universe. And the first manifestations of the physical universe was this expanding bubble of space-time. And essentially, it was a sphere that was tightly wrapped and warped. So it must have been generating gravity. There must have been a gravitational field in the very early universe before any mass was formed. So here we have this model that everybody in physics pretty much agrees with. This is what happened in the Big Bang. And then when we observe these gravitational bends in space with no adjacent mass, somehow we are compelled to make up imaginary matter to account for it, which is almost schizophrenic.
It's shocking that because everybody believes it, but here it is not being found. So I have this wrote down as a final kind of, not final question, but it was just something I wanted to throw in my notes and ask you about. And since we're kind of here, so how old how old is the universe and how did it then generate? Because I read a story about human skulls they found somewhere in a cave that date to, what was it, 1,008 years ago? Or, yeah, 1.8 million years ago?
I don't know. I'm not a student of archaeology so much.
Well, no, I'm just talking about how long has this process of the universe forming been going on. It seems, because that's over almost 2 million years ago, so the evolution of space-time, how long, I mean, I know you're not a student of it, but you've got to have had to come across a number somewhere, because it's just baffling to me to see 1.8 million.
From what we can calculate, as of now, as of the information that we have at our disposal now, in the year 2013, that we calculate that the universe is 13.7 billion years old.
Sorry, I'm letting that number rattle around my head for a few minutes.
Yeah. And what I say is that the process of the universe emerging from this non-physical source is still occurring. I believe that it is a continuous process. And I believe that that's the process. It's almost like a polarity. It's like the flow of a river, where the river is still flowing, and upstream is the quantum singularity, and downstream is the fully materialized universe. And this is why I believe the universe is continuing to expand. Now, of course, in astrophysics, following the paradigm that every physical effect must have a physical, locally connected cause, also located in the same physical universe, the explanation that they come up with for the expanding universe is another imaginary substance that's called dark energy. And it's almost kind of comical in a way. I think that physics is going through an era right now that's called that I would call it the age of denial. And that physics is going to have to work through all these odd ideas, these materialistic paradigms, until they realize that it's not working. And then at that point, they're going to open their minds to the idea that there is a non-physical source to physical reality. And that's when I think, unless something occurs in the interim to disrupt this, I think that's when they're going to turn a serious eye towards paranormal phenomena. Because, as you know, Jim, one of the things I maintain is this creational process of information that materializes from a non-material source, preceded by the bending of space that almost acts as a womb or a crucible in which this matter or this information materializes into a physical effect, exactly describes what we experience and see in paranormal events. So I think that paranormal phenomena is the evidence, the body of evidence that tells us that the material paradigm of physics is wrong. And this is where I believe it's all eventually going to merge. I think eventually they're going to be forced to look at this body of evidence.
So I guess to summarize in my kind of form here, make sure I'm getting this correct, paranormal isn't being accepted because they have enough issues in their own house they're trying to work through.
Well, you mean the paranormal community?
Well, I'm talking about the physics community not accepting paranormal because they're still having this internal debate of how to fudge together these things they can't find. So the little brother knocking at the door is causing a big headache because they're trying to do something else already and they can't solve it?
Well, there's a number of reasons why they don't officially, quote unquote, want to get involved with paranormal phenomena. And one of the just the real basic reasons is there's no compelling reason for them to do so. Of course, another reason is that it is somebody can certainly jeopardize their professional standing in those mainstream scientific fields by showing more than a passing interest in paranormal phenomena. And what I say is that the predominant belief is that those who believe in gooks and spooks are kooks, and you don't hire kooks in proper scientific environments.
So we have a social enigma, I guess. That's a big word I'm using there. To kind of to break through.
Well, yeah, and of course, as you know, we've talked about this before, the scientific community, or I should say the paranormal community, by and large, not everybody, but a goodly portion of it, do nothing to encourage the scientific study of the field. In fact, just the opposite. They do very many things to discourage serious scientists from being involved. And we could, probably go through the next hour talking about those kinds of things. But
I think we've done that before, though. So.
Oh, yeah. To make a long story short, I would say the vast majority of the scientific community see no need. I should say the vast majority of the paranormal community sees no need for science for them to do what they want to do in the field and get the satisfaction that they're looking for in this field. They have no need for physicists to get involved.
Well, just having a physicist with you sounds boring. And that's where I get in trouble. Anyways, no. I agree that most people are in it for the personal belief or the thrill, or anyways. So I want to talk to you about space-time. I guess this question comes from daylight savings time being adjusted. The other day when I'm sitting there going, I get to fall back. Maybe I can ask Thomas a question about this. So, how is I understand the basic, very rudimentary concept, but how is space-time measured? I know how we measure our time.
I understand. Well, I think it's a good way I found to talk about this is to break down what space-time is in the simplest of terms. And that is that we're talking about what Einstein said is that space is not an empty void, as Newton said. And time is not an independent, constant meter, as Newton said. What Einstein said is that the physical universe comprises 4 independent variables: length, width, depth, and time. And so the spatial dimensions, length, width, and depth, give us a geometric way of describing physical reality. And time gives us a way by which we can measure the processes that occur in reality. Let's putting it even in a more basic way, Jim, the spatial dimensions are expressions of differences between here and there. And I mean, it really is that simple. When you take off all the mumbo-jumbo and all the scientific jargon, that's what it is. Spatial dimensions are expressions of differences between here and there. And time, or the temporal dimension, is an expression of the differences between then and now. And that really is it. And we can measure these differences.